While you were watching the news argue about politics, the most significant financial event of the last 50 years just happened in complete silence. There was no press conference. There was no breaking news alert. But a digital switch was flipped in Shanghai that fundamentally broke the monopoly of the United States dollar. For decades, we have been told that the dollar is invincible. We are told there is no alternative. They tell us that China can't replace the dollar because their markets aren't open enough or their rule of law isn't strong enough. They tell you to sleep soundly because the U.S. military backs the currency. But in September, the People's Bank of China released a single data point that proves the no alternative theory is dead. $2 trillion. That is the volume of transactions processed through their new digital currency infrastructure in a single day. This wasn't just a test. This wasn't a pilot program. This was a proof of concept for a completely new global operating system. A system that does not use American banks. A system that does not touch the SWIFT network. And most importantly, a system that the United States government cannot sanction, cannot track, and cannot control. The media is ignoring this because they don't understand the plumbing of the financial world. They think money is just numbers on a screen. But money is a weapon. And for 80 years, the United States has held the gun. We could freeze assets, block trades, and destroy economies with the stroke of a pen. We need to take apart the engine to see why it is faster, cheaper, and safer than the dollar system we are stuck in. The old system, the one we live in now, is built on a relic from the 1970s. It is slow, is expensive, and it relies on a web of correspondent banks in New York to approve every major international trade. If you want to send money from Brazil to China, it usually has to turn into US dollars in the middle, pass through a US bank, and then turn into Yuan. This gives Washington a choke point. It allows the US to collect a toll on every trade and spy on every transaction. For 50 years, the world tolerated this because the dollar was stable and there was no other option. But in 2022, the United States made a fatal strategic error. When the conflict in Ukraine began, the U.S. seized Russia's foreign reserves. We told the world that if you cross us politically, your money is no longer your money. That was the moment the trust broke. It was the moment the risk-free asset became a high-risk asset for any country that might disagree with American foreign policy. China, Saudi Arabia, India, Brazil, they all looked at that seizure and realized they were living in a financial prison. So they started digging a tunnel out. That tunnel is called Project mBridge. This is the technical name for the platform that processed that massive volume of transactions. It is a collaboration between the central banks of China, Thailand, the UAE, and Hong Kong. And unlike the SWIFT system, which uses 1970s messaging technology, mBridge uses a custom-built blockchain. Here is why that matters. In the dollar system, a settlement takes 2 to 3 days. In mBridge, it takes 7 seconds. In the dollar system, fees can eat up large percentages of the transfer. In mBridge, the cost is near zero. But the real killer feature isn't speed or cost. It is sovereignty. mBridge allows a bank in Thailand to send digital currency directly to a bank in China without ever converting to dollars. The U.S. banking system is completely bypassed. We don't see the trade. We can't block the trade. And we don't get a cut of the trade. This is a direct attack on the demand for U.S. dollars. Think about it. If half of global trade suddenly stops needing dollars to settle, what happens to all those trillions of dollars that are currently floating around overseas? They come home. And when trillions of dollars come home to a domestic economy that isn't producing enough goods, you get inflation that makes the last 3 years look like a warm-up act. But technology is only the first pillar of this new system. A digital currency is useless if you can't buy anything real with it. You can't eat Bitcoin, and you can't fuel a tank with a digital token. You need resources. This brings us to the second pillar of the attack, the energy coup. Since 1974, the US dollar has been backed by one thing: oil. We made a deal with Saudi Arabia shortly after we went off the gold standard. We promised them military protection and weapons sales, and in exchange, they promised to price every barrel of oil in US dollars. This was a brilliant move. It meant that if Japan wanted oil, they had to buy US dollars first. If Europe wanted oil, they needed dollars. It created a permanent, artificial demand for our currency from every nation on Earth. This is the Petrodollar. But that deal is effectively dead. Saudi Arabia is now openly negotiating to sell oil in Chinese yuan. They are joining the BRICS alliance. They are building refineries with Sinopec. Why would they do this? Because the United States is no longer their best customer. China is. And the United States is no longer their reliable protector. We have become unreliable. So the Saudis are pivoting. They're sending their oil to the east, and they're accepting the new digital currency in return. This closes the loop. Now, China has the payment rail, which is mBridge, and the commodity, which is oil. They have a complete ecosystem that functions without Washington. And it's not just oil. Look at gold. While Western investors are chasing AI stocks and tech bubbles, the People's Bank of China has been on a gold buying spree that is breaking records. For 18 straight months, they have been hoarding tons of physical gold. They are not buying paper ETFs. They are buying the metal. Why? Because they are preparing to back their new system with something tangible. They know that a digital currency is only as good as the collateral behind it. The US dollar is backed by $38 trillion in debt. The new Eastern system is being backed by energy and gold. If you were a neutral country, say Brazil or Indonesia, and you had to choose where to store your national savings, which would you choose? The currency backed by a bankrupt government that weaponizes its banks? Or the currency backed by the world's factory, paid in gold, and settled in seconds? The choice is becoming obvious, and that is why the volume on the digital yuan is exploding. Now, let's look at what this means for the United States. This is the part of the story that the soft landing narrative completely ignores. The American economy is built on a very specific privilege: the ability to import real stuff like electronics, clothes, furniture, and cars, and pay for it with printed paper. We are the consumers of last resort. We run massive trade deficits, and the world sends us their goods because they want our dollars. This arrangement has allowed Americans to live beyond their means for 40 years. It has kept our interest rates artificially low. That $500 television at Walmart becomes $1,500. The $4 gallon of gas becomes $12. We're not talking about inflation like we saw in 2022. We're talking about a currency crisis, a situation where the purchasing power of your salary evaporates because the international subsidies we enjoyed for decades are removed. And the US government knows this. They are not stupid. They see the data from China. They see the gold buying. They see the mBridge platform. So what is their response? What is their plan to save the system? Their plan is not to fix the debt. Their plan is not to cut spending. Their plan is to lock the doors. They're building their own digital trap. It is called FedNow, and it is the precursor to a US central bank digital currency, or CBDC. If you think the digital yuan is scary because of Chinese surveillance, wait until you see the American version. The goal of a US CBDC is to prevent capital flight. When the dollar starts to really lose value, when the switch is fully flipped and the panic sets in, people will try to get their money out. They will try to buy gold. They will try to move to foreign currencies. They will try to buy Bitcoin. A CBDC gives the Federal Reserve the power to stop that. It gives them the power to limit how much gold you can buy. It gives them the power to set negative interest rates, effectively taxing your savings if you don't spend them fast enough. It is a control grid designed to keep you inside the burning building. They can program your money to only work at certain stores or to expire if not used by a certain date. This changes the fundamental nature of money from a store of value to a system of control. So we have two parallel tracks running right now. On the east, we have the escape tunnel, a new financial system built on gold, commodities, and blockchain designed to bypass the dollar. On the west, we have the digital fortress, a surveillance-based currency system designed to trap capital and manage the decline of the dollar without a total social collapse. You're standing in the middle, and you have to make a decision. The normalcy bias in your brain is telling you to ignore this. It is telling you that the dollar has always been king, so it always will be. It is telling you that China is collapsing, that their real estate market is a disaster, so they can't possibly threaten us. And yes, China has huge economic problems, but that doesn't change the math of the dollar's debt spiral. A dying man can still shoot you. The weakness of China's domestic economy does not fix the $38 trillion hole in America's balance sheet. In fact, China's economic problems might make them move faster. When a regime is under pressure at home, they often look to change the game abroad. Accelerating the death of the dollar is their best move to secure their own future. So let's play this out. What does the next 24 months look like? First, we will see the mBridge system expand. More countries will join. We are already seeing interest from nations in Africa and South America. They want the ability to trade without U.S. interference. Second, we will see a shadow inflation in the U.S. The government will manipulate the CPI numbers to make it look like inflation is 3% or 4%, but the actual cost of living, specifically insurance, food, and energy, will rise at 10% or 15%. This is how they default on the debt without admitting it. They pay the bondholders back in dollars that are worth less. Third, and this is the most dangerous part, we will see increased financial repression. The government will change the rules on banking. They might force pension funds to buy U.S. treasuries because no one else wants them. They might limit cash withdrawals. They will tighten the screws to keep the system liquid. If you're waiting for a formal announcement that the dollar has died, you will wait until it is too late. These things happen slowly and then all at once. The switch in Shanghai was the slowly part. The all at once is coming. So, how do you position yourself? How do you ensure that you are on the right side of this wealth transfer? You have to think like a sovereign nation. You have to decouple your own personal economy from the dollar, just like China and Saudi Arabia are doing. It starts with the asset that the central banks are buying. Gold. Gold is the only financial asset that is not someone else's liability. If you own a stock, you rely on the company. If you own a bond, you rely on the government. If you own a dollar, you rely on the Federal Reserve. But if you own physical gold, you rely on nothing but the laws of physics. It is the ultimate hedge against a currency reset. When the new system emerges, whether it is a gold-backed yuan or a basket of BRICS currencies, gold will be the bridge. It will be the translator of value between the dying system and the living one. Silver is the aggressive play, while gold is the savings account. Silver is the speculative engine. It is needed for the solar panels, the EVs, and the electronics of the future economy. Yet it is priced as if it is trash. The ratio of gold to silver is historically out of whack. We are consuming silver faster than we can mine it, and inventories are draining. When a repricing happens, silver has the potential to move vertically. But beyond metals, you need to look at hard assets, land, productive businesses, things that generate value regardless of what currency is used to measure it. And you need to look at Bitcoin. I know some of you are skeptics, but look at what Bitcoin actually is. It is a non-sovereign digital ledger. It is essentially a private version of what mBridge is trying to do for governments. It is a way to move value outside of the banking system. In a world of capital controls and CBDCs, a censorship-resistant digital asset is not a speculation. It is an insurance policy. The ultimate goal is to minimize your exposure to paper promises. If your wealth is entirely in promises like pensions, bonds, and savings accounts, you're the liquidity that they're going to drain to keep the system afloat. You're the bag holder. The $2 trillion signal from China is a warning shot. They're telling us that they are ready to walk away from the table. They're taking their chips, their manufacturing capacity, their labor, their resources, and they're going to their own casino. When the biggest player leaves the table, the game changes. The demand for the dollar drops. The value of the dollar drops. And the standard of living in the United States drops. This is not a message of doom. It is a message of preparation. The transition doesn't have to destroy you. For those who are prepared, it is an opportunity. When the currency resets, real assets get repriced in the new money. If you hold real assets, you ride the elevator up. If you hold paper, you stay on the ground floor while the building floods. The switch has been flipped. The new rails are laid. The oil is flowing east. The gold is moving to Shanghai. The only question left is, are you still betting on the old system? The mainstream news is designed to keep you asleep. This channel is designed to wake you up. We are building a community of people who refuse to be victims of the next wealth transfer. If you want to be part of the few who actually prepare while the rest of the world is distracted, you are in the right place. Make sure you are subscribed and share this video with one person you care about who needs to hear this warning. And tell me in the comments, do you think the US government will try to ban gold or Bitcoin when the CBDC launches? Yes or no? I read every comment. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.